Jack had always dreamed of owning a cabin tucked away in the mountains, a place where he could escape the noise and stress of city life and find peace in the quiet beauty of nature. When he finally found the perfect spot, a small, cozy cabin surrounded by tall pines and fresh air, he felt like he had found a treasure. He spent weeks preparing the cabin, fixing the porch, arranging furniture and planting flowers around the little garden. He looked forward to weekends spent hiking the trails, reading by the fireplace and watching the stars fill the night sky. The idea of a peaceful retreat was something he cherished deeply, and he planned to protect it carefully. Word about the new cabin spread quickly through the neighborhood. The quiet area had a mix of longtime residents and newcomers, but Jack's cabin stood out. It was a symbol of fresh beginnings and hope for a simpler life. Soon neighbors began to notice the new owner's routine. The early morning coffee on the porch, the weekend walks in the woods. One neighbor in particular took special interest, Karen. She was known for her strong opinions and confident approach to life. She often talked about wanting more relaxation time and how a cabin getaway sounded like a perfect chance to unwind. She watched Jack with curiosity, wondering if she might find a way to enjoy the cabin for herself. Jack remained friendly, but kept to himself, understanding that the cabin was his private space. He enjoyed greeting neighbors with a nod or a smile, but he valued his solitude and quiet times highly. As the days passed, he settled into the rhythm of his new retreat, feeling a deep sense of contentment and accomplishment. On a warm afternoon, Karen approached Jack with a bright smile and a surprising question. She asked if she could use the cabin for a weekend, just to get away from the busy life. She explained how much she needed a break and how nice it would be to spend a couple of days surrounded by nature. Jack listened carefully, and then gently explained that the cabin was a personal sanctuary meant for his own family and close friends. Karen seemed a bit taken aback, but she did not give up. She mentioned how it would only be for a short time, and how she hoped Jack might reconsider. She spoke about her son and how a weekend away could do wonders for him, too. Jack thanked her for sharing her thoughts, but stayed firm in his decision, emphasizing the importance of respecting each other's space. The encounter left Jack feeling a little uneasy. He had hoped for peaceful weekends, but now sensed that Karen's interest might turn into something more persistent. He decided to keep a close eye on the situation, while continuing to enjoy the quiet moments the cabin offered him. Neighbors nearby had begun to notice the interaction, and some whispered about Karen's request. Others admired Jack for standing his ground, quietly and respectfully. It was clear that the cabin was becoming a point of attention in the neighborhood, not just for its charm, but for the story unfolding around it. Jack made a promise to himself to protect the cabin as a place of peace and rest, to welcome others kindly, but to keep the boundaries clear so that the retreat would remain what he dreamed it to be, a sanctuary where the stresses of everyday life could fade away, replaced by calm and comfort. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a warm golden glow over the cabin, Jack stood on the porch, taking a deep breath of fresh pine-scented air. He felt ready for whatever came next, confident in his choice and hopeful that the cabin would continue to be a place of quiet joy. After her first visit, Karen found it hard to forget the idea of spending a weekend at Jack's cabin. The thought of escaping her busy daily routine and breathing in the fresh mountain air stayed with her. She began to think of ways to make that happen. Even as Jack remained polite but firm about keeping the cabin private, over the following weeks Karen stopped by more often, casually chatting with Jack about neighborhood happenings and the beauty of the area. She complimented the cabin and asked questions about the trails nearby and the wildlife. Sometimes she mentioned how relaxing it must be to have such a place all to himself. Jack answered kindly but kept his distance, making it clear the cabin was for his own use. Despite Jack's calm responses, Karen's tone sometimes hinted at hope that he might change his mind. She talked about her son needing a break and how the cabin would be the perfect spot for him. She even asked if there was any chance she could borrow the place just for one weekend. No one else would know. She assured Jack it would be a quiet visit. Jack felt the pressure growing, but stayed consistent in his answers. He believed that a home, especially one in a peaceful mountain setting, deserved respect and privacy. He worried that sharing the cabin might change the special feeling he had found there and disrupt the balance he had worked hard to create. Meanwhile, neighbors started to notice the increasing visits from Karen. Some shared their opinions quietly. Some thought it was normal for neighbors to ask favors, while others admired Jack's calm firmness in holding to his boundaries. The tension was subtle, but it was beginning to ripple through the neighborhood conversations. One afternoon, Jack returned from a walk to find Karen waiting near the driveway. She smiled warmly and said she just wanted to talk more about the cabin. She said her son had been having a tough time and that spending a weekend in the mountains could help him feel better. Jack listened, but explained again that he was not comfortable lending the cabin for such a visit. Karen's smile faded for a moment, but she quickly recovered and said she understood but hoped Jack would think about it. She suggested that sharing the cabin might even bring the neighborhood closer together. Jack thanked her, but kept his stance firm, knowing that saying yes could lead to more challenges down the road. As days passed, Karen's persistence did not wane. She began talking to other neighbors, sharing her wish to use the cabin, and sometimes implying that Jack was being unreasonable or unfriendly, even though she never said it outright. The whispers spread, and the atmosphere in the neighborhood shifted slightly with a quiet tension. Jack noticed the change, but stayed focused on what mattered most to him: the peace of his cabin, the quiet moments surrounded by nature, the time to recharge and simply be himself. He knew that keeping firm boundaries was important, but also wanted to avoid conflict and maintain goodwill where possible. One evening, Jack sat on the porch, reflecting on the unusual situation. He realized that what started as a simple question had become a complicated challenge. He hoped that time and calm conversations would help everyone understand and respect the choices made about the cabin. The mountain breeze carried the scent of pine and the quiet sounds of birds settling for the night. Jack felt determined to protect the sanctuary he had dreamed of, while still hoping for a peaceful neighborhood where neighbors could coexist respectfully, even when disagreements arose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack looked forward to the weekends ahead, confident that his love for the cabin and his calm approach would guide him through whatever came next. He was ready to stand firm while keeping an open mind for solutions that honored everyone's dignity. As the weeks went by, Karen's visits and requests didn't slow down. Instead, they became more frequent and persistent. Jack found himself facing an uncomfortable situation that began to ripple through the neighborhood. Karen seemed determined to get access to the cabin, no matter how many times Jack gently declined her requests. One afternoon, Jack was working outside when Karen appeared at the driveway again. She greeted him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and began talking about her weekend plans. She mentioned how much her son needed a break from school and how the cabin would be perfect for that. She asked if he had reconsidered. Jack shook his head calmly, explaining once again that the cabin was his private retreat. He emphasized how important it was to him and his family to have a quiet space to recharge. He appreciated her understanding but stood firm on his boundaries. Karen's smile faded, but she didn't argue. Instead, she nodded slowly and left. Fortunately, that wasn't the end of it. Karen soon started talking to other neighbors, sharing her side of the story, hinting that Jack was being unkind or unwilling to help. She suggested that sharing the cabin could bring the neighborhood together. A comment that created some confusion and concern among residents. Some neighbors began to feel caught in the middle, unsure whether to support Karen's wish or respect Jack's privacy. Many chose to stay silent, while others quietly offered words of encouragement. To Jack, they admired his respectful but firm approach and hoped the situation would calm down before it escalated. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior became more noticeable. Her visits sometimes occurred at unexpected times, and her conversations seemed less casual and more focused on pressing the issue of cabin use. She started asking about HOA policies, and if there were any rules about sharing or lending homes in the neighborhood. Jack found himself watching for signs that the situation might worsen, but he tried not to let it affect his enjoyment of the cabin. The quiet forest and mountain views continued to bring him peace. Yet he knew that the tension in the neighborhood was a shadow he couldn't ignore one evening after a long day. Jack heard raised voices near the entrance to the cabin. He stepped outside to see Karen speaking loudly with a few neighbors. Some were trying to calm her down, but she appeared frustrated and determined. Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. Knowing that things were reaching a turning point, he approached calmly and asked if everything was all right. Karen turned to him, her eyes flashing. She said she believed she had a right to use the cabin and that Jack was being unfair. She said she planned to take further steps to get what she wanted. Jack listened patiently but said he hoped they could find a peaceful way forward. The neighbors nearby watched quietly, sensing the tension but hoping for a resolution that wouldn't divide the community. Jack returned inside, feeling the weight of the moment, knowing that the next days might bring unexpected challenges and that standing firm might soon be tested in ways he hadn't imagined. As night fell, the cabin seemed quieter than usual. The mountain breeze carried the scent of pine and the distant calls of owls. Jack took a deep breath, reminding himself why he had chosen this place for peace and reflection. He resolved to face whatever came next with calm and courage. The story of the cabin was no longer just about a retreat. It had become a test of patience, respect, and the balance between personal boundaries and neighborhood harmony. Jack knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to protect his sanctuary while seeking understanding wherever possible. The weekend arrived with a crispness in the air, the kind that made the forest smell fresh and alive. Jack was looking forward to a peaceful couple of days in his cabin, enjoying the calm he had worked so hard to create. But as he pulled into the driveway, he noticed an unexpected sight. Karen was already there, standing near the porch, with a determined look on her face. Jack's heart sank, knowing that despite all the conversations and boundaries she had crossed, before Karen had come without warning or invitation. This time she spoke quickly and firmly, telling Jack that she had been given permission by some neighbors to use the cabin and that she planned to stay for the weekend. Jack took a deep breath and calmly explained that no such permission had been granted and that the cabin was his private property. Karen's expression shifted from confidence to frustration, and she raised her voice in front of neighbors who had gathered nearby to see what was happening. She insisted that Jack was being unreasonable and unfair, and that the cabin should be a place for everyone in the neighborhood to enjoy. Jack stood his ground, saying firmly that the cabin was his home and retreat, and that he had the right to decide who could enter. The neighbors watching the exchange felt the tension rise. Many wanted to stay out of the conflict, but some whispered about how difficult the situation was becoming. The scene grew louder as Karen's frustration boiled over. She began calling Jack names and accusing him of being selfish. The calm atmosphere Jack had hoped for vanished quickly. Before the situation escalated further, Karen suddenly pulled out her phone and dialed the police while continuing to shout claims about being denied access to property. She insisted that Jack was harassing her and demanded that the officers intervene quickly. The neighbors exchanged worried looks, unsure how this would unfold. Jack remained calm as he waited. For the police to arrive, he knew that losing his temper would only make things worse. He gathered the paperwork proving ownership and prepared to explain the situation clearly and respectfully. When the officers pulled up, Jack met them at the porch. The officers listened carefully to both Jack and Karen. Jack explained that he owned the cabin outright and had never given permission for anyone else to use it. He shared the documents and outlined the previous conversations in a clear, steady voice. Karen repeated her claims that she had been wrongfully denied access and that she was simply trying to take a break after hearing both sides. The officers reminded everyone that the cabin was private property and that no one had the right to enter. Without the owner's consent, they advised Karen to respect Jack's wishes and suggested both parties keep their distance to avoid further conflict before leaving the scene. With the police gone, Jack felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The confrontation had shaken the neighborhood and left a ripple of unease among neighbors who hoped the dispute would not grow more serious. Karen left shortly after, but not before making it clear she would not give up easily. That evening, Jack sat on his porch watching the stars and thinking about how quickly things had escalated from a polite request to a public showdown. He resolved to handle the situation with even more care and patience, knowing that protecting his peaceful cabin might require firm boundaries and clear communication. He also realized that the neighborhood would likely be talking about the incident for weeks to come, and that rebuilding calm and trust would take time and effort. Jack felt determined to meet those challenges with grace and strength. The cabin remained his sanctuary, and he would do all he could to keep it that way. The weekend confrontation had left a lasting impression across the neighborhood. News of the incident traveled quickly through the rows of houses nestled beneath the trees and into the meetings of the HOA board. The board members understood that the situation was delicate and required a thoughtful response to preserve peace and clear up any misunderstandings about property and shared spaces. Soon the HOA sent out a notice inviting residents to a meeting to discuss guidelines for property use and neighbor relations. It was an opportunity to hear from all parties and to help the community navigate the tensions that had grown around Jack's cabin and Karen's insistence on access. The night of the meeting, the community center buzzed. With a mix of curiosity, concern, and hope, residents gathered in chairs arranged in a circle. Some whispered quietly, others sat attentively waiting for the discussion to begin. Jack and Karen both attended each, aware that the eyes of the neighborhood were on them. The board chair opened the meeting, emphasizing the importance of respect, communication, and clear rules to maintain a peaceful neighborhood. He invited Jack to speak. First, Jack calmly explained how he had purchased the cabin for private use and the peaceful retreat it represented for him and his family. He described his attempts to maintain friendly but firm boundaries and how the repeated requests had affected him. Next, Karen shared her perspective. She spoke about her desire for a break and how she had hoped to enjoy the cabin as a neighbor. She expressed frustration about feeling unheard and wished for a way to find common ground. Jack listened carefully, as did many others. The room felt tense but respectful as both sides spoke honestly. The HO board then introduced draft guidelines that clarified property rights and encouraged neighbors to respect private spaces while also offering suggestions for how to foster friendly relations, such as neighborhood events shared. Spaces like parks and trails and open lines of communication. The goal was to balance individual privacy with a sense of community. Several neighbors shared their views. Some expressed support for Jack's right to privacy while others empathized with Karen's wish for relaxation, but most agreed that boundaries were necessary to prevent conflicts from growing. The conversation shifted to ideas for building trust and encouraging kindness among neighbors. By the end of the meeting, there was a sense of cautious optimism. Many residents felt heard and hopeful that the new guidelines would help prevent similar tensions. In the future, Jack and Karen both agreed to work toward a more peaceful neighborhood despite their differences and promised to keep communication open after the meeting. Jack reflected on how far things had come from the initial request to a community discussion. He felt proud of the calm and respectful way the situation was being handled, and hopeful that the cabin would once again be a place of quiet joy without ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, Karen took time to consider the feedback she had received and the importance of respecting others' property and feelings. She realized that finding a peaceful way forward required patience and understanding, and began thinking about how she might change her approach to become a better neighbor. The HOA board continued working on finalizing the guidelines and planned events that would bring residents together. To build stronger connections, they hoped that the experience with Jack and Karen's dispute would serve as a reminder of the value of clear communication and respect for boundaries. As the sun set behind the mountains, the neighborhood seemed to breathe a little easier. A new chapter was beginning, one focused on harmony, understanding, and the simple kindness that comes from listening and standing firm when needed. Jack looked forward to the days ahead, confident that peace was possible. In the days following the HOA meeting, Karen found herself reflecting deeply on everything that had happened, the open conversations, the different perspectives shared, and the importance of respect that had been emphasized throughout. She realized that her desire for a break had unintentionally created tension and unease in the neighborhood. She began to understand the value of boundaries and how vital they were for peaceful living. Karen decided to reach out to Jack with a sincere intention. To mend fences, she approached him one afternoon near the cabin's driveway. Her voice calm and steady, she expressed regret for the pressure she had put on him and apologized for the stress her requests and actions may have caused. Jack was surprised, but appreciated her honesty. He listened carefully as Karen explained her wish to move forward with mutual respect. Jack responded with warmth and openness, acknowledging that while the situation had been challenging, he believed they could build a better neighborly connection going forward. He shared his hope for a peaceful environment where boundaries were respected, but kindness and understanding flourished between residents. Their conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship, a turning point from tension toward cooperation. They discussed ways to communicate openly and avoid misunderstandings in the future. Karen promised to respect Jack's private time at the cabin, and Jack welcomed the chance to create a friendly atmosphere without fear of conflict. News of Karen's change of heart spread quietly through the neighborhood, bringing relief and a sense of hope to many residents who had witnessed the earlier challenges. Some neighbors expressed admiration for Karen's willingness to grow and Jack's ability to forgive and look ahead with optimism. To build on this progress, the HOA board encouraged neighbors to participate in upcoming community events designed to strengthen bonds and promote positive interactions. Jack and Karen both agreed to attend, hoping their example might inspire others to embrace respect and patience in difficult situations. As the weeks passed, Jack found his weekends once again filled with quiet enjoyment. In the cabin, surrounded by nature's beauty, while Karen began finding new ways to relax and unwind that did not involve the cabin, she took up hiking the local trails and joined a book club with neighbors sharing stories and laughter without tension or expectations. Their story became a reminder in the neighborhood of the power of communication and the importance of balancing personal needs with respect for others. It showed that even when challenges arise, a willingness to listen, apologize, and change can lead to stronger connections and greater harmony. Jack often thought back to the early days when Karen first approached him and smiled at how much had changed. The cabin remained his sanctuary, a place of peace and calm. But now, it also symbolized the neighborhood's journey from conflict to understanding, a place where respect and kindness could coexist beautifully as the seasons changed and the mountains dressed in vibrant colors. Jack and Karen found themselves part of a community that was learning and growing together, embracing differences and building friendships that would last beyond any single dispute. The cabin stood quietly at the center of it all, a beacon of hope and renewal. With the tension behind them, Jack and Karen began to participate more actively in neighborhood events. The once strained atmosphere was gradually replaced by a sense of community and cooperation that many had hoped for, but had seemed distant just weeks earlier. The HOA organized a spring picnic at the local park, a gathering designed to bring everyone together with food, games, and conversation. Neighbors showed up with smiles and open hearts. Eager to enjoy the day, the picnic was a chance for Jack and Karen to connect with others in a new way. Both found themselves engaging in lighthearted talks and shared laughter for the first time in a long while. Jack's stories about hiking trails and the quiet beauty around his cabin inspired others to explore the outdoors, while Karen shared her experiences from the book club and her newfound appreciation for nature. The conversations sparked friendships and helped dissolve the last lingering feelings of division that had shadowed the neighborhood. As the picnic unfolded, neighbors exchanged ideas about how to keep the spirit of cooperation alive. They talked about creating small groups for walking the trails, weekend gardening projects, and monthly potlucks. The energy was positive and hopeful, with everyone agreeing that building community was a shared responsibility. Meanwhile, Jack and Karen found themselves working together on a neighborhood beautification project, planting flowers and cleaning up common areas. Their teamwork was a visible sign of how far they had come, and a reminder that cooperation could turn even the toughest challenges into opportunities for growth. Through these activities, Jack noticed a change in Karen's demeanor. She seemed more relaxed and content, as if letting go of old frustrations brought her a sense of peace. The neighbors appreciated seeing this side of her and felt encouraged to open their own hearts toward each other. In the evenings, Jack often sat on his cabin porch, reflecting on the transformation not just in his own life, but across the neighborhood. The place that had once been a point of conflict was now a symbol of connection and healing, a reminder that respect and kindness could bridge even the widest divides. Karen's journey, too, was marked by new friendships and experiences. She had discovered joys beyond her earlier wishes and found fulfillment in community involvement and shared moments that brought laughter and lightness to her days. The cabin remained a quiet presence in the background, a place respected and valued by all. As summer approached, the neighborhood felt more united than ever. The foundation of respect laid down during the difficult times had blossomed into genuine care and understanding. Neighbors looked out for one another, shared celebrations, and supported each other through challenges, creating a warmth that extended beyond the individual homes. Jack and Karen knew that moments of disagreement might still arise, but they had learned the importance of listening calmly and communicating clearly. Their story was no longer one of conflict, but a testament to the power of patience, forgiveness, and friendship. Their experience inspired others to believe in the possibility of harmony. Even in difficult situations, the cabin, nestled quietly among the trees, stood as a gentle reminder that peace and community were not just places, but choices made every day by neighbors willing to respect boundaries and open their hearts to understanding. The neighborhood had grown stronger and more connected, ready for whatever the future might bring. The warm light of early autumn filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. Jack stood on his cabin porch watching as families and neighbors moved about the streets with a new sense of camaraderie and ease. The changes that had once seemed impossible now felt natural and lasting. For Jack, the cabin remained a sanctuary, a place of quiet reflection and peace, but it also symbolized something greater. A journey from tension and frustration to understanding and respect. He felt grateful for the growth he and the neighborhood had experienced. The once difficult situation had become a catalyst for connection and renewal. Karen, too, found herself embracing the changes. Her perspective shifted from entitlement to appreciation. She had learned to value the importance of patience, listening, and clear communication more than she ever expected. The neighborhood was no longer just a place she lived, but a community she wanted to support and contribute. Over the past months, Jack and Karen had built a respectful friendship based on honesty and shared experiences. They often met at neighborhood events or simply chatted during casual walks. Their interactions were marked by warmth and mutual respect, a far cry from the early days of conflict. Together, they had helped inspire others to approach disagreements with calmness and kindness, to seek solutions that honored everyone's needs. Their story became a quiet but powerful reminder that boundaries and generosity could coexist when people chose empathy and patience. The Hoa continued to foster this spirit by organizing gatherings and workshops focused on communication and neighborly cooperation. The community center was filled with laughter and lively discussion as residents discovered new ways to support each other and build lasting bonds. It was a place where differences were respected and common goals celebrated as the leaves turned shades of amber and crimson. Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the cabin was part of something bigger than himself. It was a symbol of resilience, peace, and the power of respect. He looked forward to many more seasons of quiet mornings and friendly smiles. Karen often reflected on her own journey, recognizing how much she had grown and how much richer her life had become by embracing patience and understanding. She found joy in the small moments of connection and the support of neighbors who had become friends. Her life was fuller and more peaceful than she had imagined. One crisp evening, Jack and Karen stood side by side, watching the sun set behind the mountains, the sky painted with hues of pink and purple. They shared a quiet smile, acknowledging the distance they had traveled from confrontation to community. Their story was a testament to the power of kindness and the possibility of new beginnings. As night settled over the neighborhood, the cabins and houses glowed softly with warm lights inside. The trees rustled gently in the breeze, and a sense of calm and hope filled the air. Jack felt ready for whatever the future might hold, confident that the strength of community and respect would guide the way. This was not just the end of a story, but the start of a new chapter, where neighbors embraced each other's differences, stood firm on their values, and worked together to create a place where everyone could find peace, joy, and belonging. Jack's cabin remained a quiet refuge, a place of memories, and a symbol of the harmony that had been achieved. With hearts open and spirits renewed, the neighborhood looked ahead with hope and determination, ready to face whatever challenges might come, knowing that together they were stronger, kinder, and more connected than ever. Before, the cabin's story was a shining example of what was possible when respect and friendship led the way.